Today's episode is even more special as the person I've got in the studio is somebody I personally look up to. And just as he has inspired me through his relentless efforts in the conservation of the environment, his work has influenced many others in that direction. So I welcome to the studio Mr. Utsav Pradhan.
Thank you, Shraddha, and it's my privilege and my honor to be here talking about waste management and to be sharing this moment with you.
So let's talk about the term waste management. Many years ago, it just meant put the trash in the dustbin, do not litter, keep your surroundings clean. How has the term waste management changed now?
It's evolved drastically, and I think now it is more about resource management rather than waste management, because the moment we term something as waste, it has a negative connotation where you want to throw it away. But now I think we've started understanding that in case of waste, there is no such thing as away. If you look at that particular material that you would want to discard and look at it as a resource, or if we create a circular system where it goes back into the system adding value to it, then we will not be having the problems that we are witnessing right now with regards to pollution of air, water and soil. So I think the most, I would say, remarkable change that the waste management industry has gone through is to now to be considered as a resource management industry rather than a waste management industry.
So, right from the packaging and production of the food that we eat, to the personal care products that we use every day, to the gadgets that we use, each and everything almost ends up being a toxic waste in the environment. How did we end up here? I mean, is it because we started choosing convenience and comfort over conscience, or we fell prey to big brands and their advertisements? How did we end up in this mess?
I think the core of the problem lies with how we've evolved as, I would say, the human civilization, where we've lived in harmony with Mother Nature relatively, you can say, for millions of years. And it's been the last, I would say, 200 years after the start of the Industrial Revolution, where we started extracting more and more resources, more than what we need actually, for fulfilling some of, like you said, some of our conveniences. And in the last 20-30 years, what has happened is, it is not just the global north or so-called developed nations which has been doing this, but the entire world has started aping this particular model of development where you are extracting resources from Mother Nature relentlessly, and also you are giving a notion of development to people, stating that you need to purchase new things constantly to be able to be considered as developed. So I think the core of the problem lies with the fact that we have all adopted consumerism as a benchmark for our sense of growth. I think that's the core of the problem. So this whole notion of GDP, or the gross domestic product, to measure one's growth is flawed, because we can't be burning a house down while we are trying to add more floors to it. So that's exactly what we are doing. We are burning our only home down right now.
That is so true. There have been many awareness campaigns going on about waste segregation, using less plastic, and not dumping trash irresponsibly. But there seems to be a gap between awareness and action or implementation. Why do you think this gap is there?
So our experience has shown us that there are gaps at multiple levels. The first and foremost, there's still a huge gap with regards to awareness, because of course people have been saying that plastic is bad, but right now people don't even know what is plastic. When you go out and you might think, oh bhaiya plastic ke cup mein mat dena, and then you might have just picked up a paper cup and felt good about it. But you know what, that's even more worse than plastic, because it's a multi-layer packaging, right? So at least that plastic cup may have a chance of being recycled, but that paper cup which has got a plastic lining in it, one, it's harmful for your health, and second, it cannot even be recycled. So that level of awareness as to what constitutes the material makeup is still yet to kind of go into the mainstream consciousness. That's one gap with regards to lack of awareness. Second gap, I think, is lack of infrastructure. I think we have focused on building roads, we have focused on other models of development, but we have not really invested and understood what it takes to holistically manage waste and to consider it as a resource. Right? So we're still focusing on how best can the collection system be, or where is it that we dump. Right? So we have to move away from this burning and the dumping culture. And I think third, and one of the most important gap that I see, is the fact that people need to understand that it has to be participative, where I still see a lot of people complaining that it's the municipality that is not doing its act, or let's say the government, it's not doing its act. But in terms of waste, it's like you shouldn't ask what the government is doing for you. You should first ask yourself as to, are you doing enough? Are you composting at home? Have you reduced your plastic consumption? So things like that. So those are the three big gaps from what we have seen so far.
I also feel that there are many people who want to get started in this journey of zero waste living or creating minimum waste, but it may feel very overwhelming. One may not know where to start without proper guidance or a mentor. So for anyone trying to start living more responsibly in terms of creating waste, what are some baby steps one can take as an individual?
You can start by looking at your own life and trying to see whether you can opt for any alternative for, let's say, a plastic material that you're using. So for instance, even simple things like carrying your own bag wherever you are going would help you cut down, like, let's say, hundreds of bags that you would end up getting to carry your stuff back from what you purchase. And even things like when you wake up in the morning, the first thing that you do is brush your teeth, but do you brush your teeth with a bamboo toothbrush or a plastic toothbrush? So I think reflection on our day-to-day life would help, and then looking at options would also help, because there are options galore for people who are willing to make a switch. So that itself would help you reduce the generation of so-called waste. Second, I think one of the most important steps that you could take is to compost. The reason why I'm saying compost is, in fact, our initial focus in the first few years has been on compost, and now that we are also focusing on the non-biodegradable waste. But why compost is because when you start composting your biodegradable waste and converting that into nutrient-rich soil, you will go through a transformational process. One, of course, you have the good feeling of having not contributed 50% of your waste to the landfill. You would also be, in some ways, magically transformed by the soil that you're creating, because you're playing with microbes, it's good for your health, and there is this particular bacteria called McVacae that actually goes inside your body. You'll become healthier, and also the whole load of compost that you create will encourage you to start growing your own organic food. So composting is easy, it can be done at home, and whether you are a business or you are an individual, you can start composting like anywhere, anytime. So I would say those are the first few baby steps that one can take. So we realize that initially, like you mentioned, it gets overwhelming because we've not seen it work. We've always been told to keep it clean, but we've not really been told as to what happens after you kind of clean up. So when you look at a little bit of hand-holding at the beginning, so we started this campaign last year called Wakkai Dikke. So it's saying that, okay, it's about time that we put a stop to this problem of waste, and we are Wakkai Dikke with the way things are, and we want to bring about a change. So we started this campaign last year where you could take a pledge, and you could go to our website www.tieedit.in and then /pledge. In that website, you would see a form. So once you fill up the form, our team will get in touch with you. And wherever you are, the team would start hand-holding you as to how you can make your home or your business enterprise zero waste. And once you start taking the first few steps, trust me, you'll start running yourself. You don't need any hand holding. And it's just a natural process that you will start picking up on your own.
I totally believe you when you say that it is a natural process, because when I first started composting, even if there was a slight gap in my composting unit, I would be like, something will go wrong. But over the years, my instincts have gotten better.
Yeah.
It definitely is a natural process, and it feels so good to, start listening to your gut feeling and to work towards that.
Yeah.
So one of the most remarkable achievements of your team has been that 3 villages, Rajahatta, Naya Basti and 12th Mile village, have adopted the zero waste way of living. So how was that journey like?
It's been a very enriching, rewarding, and a very, very fulfilling journey, because it has taken us years to get where we are, to create this framework. And now that we have created a strong framework, it is easy for us to kind of take even villages zero waste. Earlier, we were targeting individuals. Now we're targeting communities to go zero waste. So apart from the technical aspect of it as to how do you manage the waste, both biodegradable and non-biodegradable, there is this psychosocial aspect of it. How do you look at the social parameters, and how do you kind of make people's mindset look at things from a different perspective? It is about creating this framework in such a comprehensive way that next time round, it just looks like, oh, it was easy, So it is about when someone looks at it from outside, you make it so simple that it seems, why didn't I think about it? So it is as simple as that now. And in fact, anyone can adopt that model. So the goal was to ensure that in those villages, there is no one that is burning the waste. There is no one that's dumping the waste. They either compost the biodegradable waste, or they use it to feed their livestock. And in case of the dry waste, we ask them to kind of segregate and keep it. So we take them through a training program as to how do you segregate your non-biodegradable waste further: plastic, paper, glass, and then there is this hazardous waste which constitutes diapers and sanitary pads. So all of those are segregated and kept well. And the TET team goes into the village once in a week and then collects it and then takes it to our materials recovery facility where we process it further. And now the next level of evolution that is happening in these villages after it's gone zero waste is that they are segregating it at source themselves now. Earlier we were doing it at TD. Now the villages are themselves segregating it and then giving it to us. So which makes it easier for us to kind of then manage it further. Just to quote one of the villagers, he said, so till now we were happy, things were going good and we've been following this zero waste practice, but now we also feel the burden, and suddenly things are heavier on us because there is a board that says we are a zero waste village. Tomorrow if anyone from outside comes and sees a piece of plastic, it is on us. So the responsibility is also on us to kind of ensure that there is no litter anymore in the village, because the name of the village is zero waste and our names are below. So that responsibility automatically comes in once you kind of ensure that you do it with a little bit of fanfare and ensure that you start labeling it as a zero waste village.
And that sense of responsibility that is not thrust on you, but it comes from within.
It comes from that's
that
important.
Goes long term.
Yeah, that makes a lot of difference.
So what are some major projects that your team has been working on?
We have been focusing on frameworks. Now, why I emphasize frameworks is because the moment that you do a certain work on a certain sector, it's important that that work adds value to anything that you do later. So whether it be zero waste villages, we've created a framework. Now it's easy as to kind of plug in and plug out. So similarly, we've done frameworks for events. So we've done like 5 marathons that we've done it as zero waste so far. And it's probably the first time in India that marathons where even 3,000 runners are there has been executed as a zero waste marathon. And also similarly, we've focused on creating policies that would make a difference so that whatever that we've started can be sustained again in the future. So on that, we've started working with the government. So we've also been appointed as an implementation partner for the Swachh Bharat mission, where the focus is on solid and liquid waste management. So that would entail that there are certain gram panchayats that's allocated to us where we are the implementation partner. That means we would be responsible for the solid and liquid waste management for those panchayats that's there. So while executing the work on those particular areas, we are also now working together with the government to help them frame the policies. So once these policies are framed, then our objective of making the grassroots work, a community-led effort, a bottom-up initiative, meet the top-down policy somewhere midway. And that's, I think, how transformational change occurs. Because if you try it any other way, what will happen is if a policy is thrust down, okay, without the people's participation, then it dissipates. If there is an initiative that is coming just from the community, comes up, it would hit the ceiling at some point of time and would not be able to go further unless and until there is a policy support. So I think our big focus now is on ensuring that we create policies through the government so that the implementation of it becomes part of the legal framework and something that you have to abide as a law-abiding citizen.
So which areas are you covering?
So right now we have the Margaret's Hope Gram Panchayat, the Upper Sunada, Lower Sunada Gram Panchayats that have been allocated to us, and also we started work on those sectors. But having said that, our work is something that can be helpful to people anywhere. So similarly, we've started working on a restaurant in Rohini, which is a very popular restaurant, and they've gone zero waste with us for the last 1 year. So imagine one very popular eatery which probably generates about 60 kgs of waste per day does not contribute anything to the landfill. They compost their biodegradables and they ensure that they segregate and recycle and upcycle all the non-biodegradables. So we've been helping them for the past 1 year. Similarly, we've been working with different schools and helping them also go zero waste. So it is something that can be applicable to anyone, anywhere. So that's why we came up also with this pledge form where if you are interested, you can just go, like I mentioned, to td.in/pledge, sign up that form. One of our zero waste officers will get in touch with you, and therein starts your zero waste journey.
So let's talk about one of the most hazardous forms of waste, e-waste. Batteries, old broken phones. What does one do with them?
As of now, I think it's important to realize how toxic it can get, right? So one phone, if you leave it on your land, within the next few years, the heavy metals in it will start contaminating the soil in ways that would be irreversible for decades. So it's important to segregate your e-waste and ensure that it's taken to a registered recycler. Now, e-waste recycling is still evolving in countries like India. We still do not have the kind of infrastructure that we should be having. But at least if you sort it and you segregate it and keep it aside and hand it over to organizations like us or the other organizations that's collecting the e-waste, like in Darjeeling you have AIWC, so they are also collecting that. So it's important that we keep that aside and ensure that we keep it away from air, water and soil.
Waste management is definitely a global problem. Are there any countries that are handling their waste in the right way and have their policies and practices in place?
So the global north, which is seemingly clean, which you might not see much of later, has done a great job in, I would say, not managing its waste, I would say hiding its waste. And also it's done a terrible thing of actually to be exporting their waste to the global south for decades before we started realizing it. And China banned it in 2018, India banned it in 2019 in terms of importing of waste. So what you see as cleanliness is not something that should be a benchmark for waste management. So there are a few communities within India and also across the world which has adopted a zero waste method of management. One is this very inspiring village in Japan called Kamikatsu. So Kamikatsu village in Japan segregates its waste in more than like 50 categories, and every household level segregation is now touching like I think more than 10 categories, and then they take it to the nearest resource recovery center. So the idea there again is not to contribute to the landfill or not to have any landfill within the city. Closer home, in India you have the city of Trivandrum, which has been implementing a decentralized waste management process for the past almost 7 years now. And what they've also done is ensure that there is no landfill in the city. So all waste is either composted at home or taken to the nearest resource recovery center. So those are a few examples that we'd like to kind of emulate. The city that constantly gets ranked on Swachh Bharat #1 is Indore. They are doing a good job.
This is a discussion where people of all ages need to be engaged in it, and we cannot leave the young minds behind, the future generation. So how do we include children and young adults in this?
I think it needs to be part of the school curriculum. Definitely it needs to be part of the school curriculum, and it needs to be again something that is hands-on and something that on which students are graded upon. So realizing this big need is the reason why we've launched a program this year where TD would be onboarding a few schools. We'll be taking limited number of schools this year on a curriculum that we've developed called Everyday Environmentalism. So Everyday Environmentalism is a subject that will have lesson plans, will have practicals, will have theory, and will be taught like any other subject in the school. We've onboarded a couple of teachers and then we've taken them through a rigorous training program. And starting from April, they would be working with a few schools in Kurseong and Darjeeling and Siliguri to take the entire school through this experiential environment education. Why I'm saying it's different than other programs that might have been tried out in the past is because this time we would be utilizing our on-the-ground practical experience to create modules in which it will be hands-on for the students to learn more about not just waste management, but how do you interact better with the environment around you. That's a big gap that needs to be filled, and I think we will start working on that too now.
That is definitely going to be a fun subject for them that they would love to be a part of. During the cleanup drives, I think the maximum waste is that of single-use plastics in the form of carry bags, food packaging, product packaging. So are biodegradable plastics the way to go as a packaging material?
I think the way to go is to bring your own bag. The way to go is to ensure that there is less amount of packaging, there is less amount of carry bags that is given to people, and you are encouraged to carry your own bag. The reason why I emphasize that is because bioplastics has its own set of problems. Now, you may say that it's made out of cornstarch or any plant-based material, and over a period of time it can compost, but the composting conditions are not something that is available. Composting facilities are not available. And second, there are other problems that's associated with it in the sense that it could lead to a problem where a certain plant material is grown in an inorganic way to meet the demands of people wanting those particular carry bags. For instance, corn, right? If you look at bags that's made out of cornstarch, if you look that to replace the plastic bags instead of us adopting bring your own bag policy, then what would happen eventually is that huge amount of land that could have been forests, that could have been life supporting to not just humans but other beings would be torn down for us to go through a monoculture way of growing corn to be able to support this new industry of so-called bioplastic, because people forget to carry their own bags, so it's kind of silly. It's definitely better than plastic that is coming from fossil fuels or as a petroleum product, but that is not the silver bullet, or that is not the one-stop solution that is there for taking care of the packaging industry. So I think it's important that we take our responsibility to realize that, one, you carry your own bag, second, you buy things in open as much as possible. To bring in more awareness about waste management, it is to start within. Before we dwell upon how do we solve the problem at a municipality level or a village level or a city or a country level, we just look within and say, what is it that I can do to make things better, rather than waiting for things to change around. And there are so many things that would turn out to be extremely rewarding for you if you take the first step. So I think the most important step is to take the step within rather than trying to look out for big changes outside. Eventually those changes will come, because from what I see, people are going to realize that the waste management crisis is not something that is far away from them. Because you may think that you have cleaned up your home, it doesn't matter because you've dumped everything outside, but then it's getting dumped somewhere and it's getting burnt somewhere, and you are breathing that air, your child is breathing that air, your old parents are breathing that air, and it's carcinogenic, it's harming the health. You may dump it into a nearby river and you may think that, oh, it's gone down, right? But for instance, Darjeeling, the water is getting pumped up from Batase, right? So it's coming back to you. So once you realize that the elements of nature through which we are alive, the air, water and soil, is getting polluted is when you realize the urgency of the matter, and that's when you start taking steps to be part of the solution rather than be part of the problem. So I would say start from yourself and then start looking at changes from outside. So I would say be the change that you wish to see around you.
Thank you so much for your time today, and thank you so much for this wonderful, engaging, meaningful discussion.
Thank you so much, Shraddha. And like I mentioned, it's a privilege and an honor to be here.